let's watch real life lores, how Putin's invasion is changing our world forever.
Video is made possible by Curiosity Stream and Nebula. Watch another brand new, full-length companion video to this one in my ongoing Modern Conflict series that explains the entire course of Russia's prior
Fighting against any invading power almost always increases the far-right nationalist response because the war started in 2014. The Ukrainian far-right had nearly a decade to organize. In other places, there would have been an equally large leftist battalion. Yeah, except the leftist battalions were considered pro-Russia. And in some instances, the leftists were pro-Russia, like the trade unionists that burned alive, 46 of them. It's just, that's the problem, okay? Ukraine's history of nation building. Ukraine's nation building project has oftentimes had some, tricky allegiances that maybe were made permanent rather than like a one-off. There were a lot of anti-imperialist, anti-colonialist nations that wanted to get away from the colonial struggle by maybe not taking an immediate anti-Nazi Germany stance. Some of them, however, took it a little bit further. Ukraine is one of those countries that did take it a little bit further. Ukraine also, without being prompted by anyone else, straight up decided one of the main collaborators, Stefan Bandera, or the main figurehead of the Ukrainian fascist movement, the Ukrainian Nationalist Coalition, was declared a hero. So if you only know about Ukrainian history from like 2014 onwards and act like Ukraine wasn't a fucking country with genuine interests, or has no history with Russia, has no history of nationalism taking up root, or think that Ukraine never had 1.6 million more Jews living inside of its borders that I guess magically disappeared somehow, or even Ukraine's war with Poland and the Polish people, you will be shocked and confused and think that people are making a much bigger deal about this than they should be. And by the way, of course, Russia is propagandizing that. Of course they are. That's not even something that is, I think, hidden. They, of course, are thinking that this is a justifiable reason to invade Ukraine. It's not.
Devastating wars against Chechnya throughout the 1990s, along with further episodes covering the Russian invasion of Georgia and the entire war between Russia and Ukraine up until now, all of which you can access by signing up for the Curiosity Stream Nebula bundle deal for less than $15 a year at curiositystream.com/reallifelore. In the early morning hours of the 24th of February 2022, after many months of military buildup along the borders, something that was previously unthinkable to nearly everyone actually happened. Within Ukraine, the morning everywhere erupted with the sound of cruise missiles and artillery barrages.
Bro, real life lore is really fucking good. They were one of probably like the only fucking like Western outlets or Western YouTube content creators or just Westerns in general who didn't immediately just say Russia wants to do USSR. Russia wants to do USSR. Russia actually fucking just wants to take over the entirety of Ukraine for no reason other than doing the USSR. They actually sat the fuck down and explained the materialist reasons as to why Russia has an interest in having some kind of say over the Ukrainian economy and how they were able to enforce that influence or their regional sovereignty was diminishing and how they needed to recover that by invading Ukraine.
What time is?
The Russian armed forces initiated their full-scale invasion of the country, prompting the largest military conflict between two nation-states in Europe since the Second World War.
Clashes followed a campaign of aerial bombardment.
How can I
Bombings, too, at the other airports and military sites.
More than 200,000 Russian soldiers, along with their guns, tanks, trucks, and planes, surged across the Ukrainian border along 3 different fronts. And in the weeks since, the world as we knew it before has been forever and irreversibly changed in countless ways. As Vladimir Lenin once said over a century ago, there are decades where nothing happens, and there are weeks where decades happen.
Oh, come on, bro. You're gonna fucking... Oh, dude, what are you making this video for me, bro? You're gonna fucking hit us with the old Vlad takes, dude? With the old Vlad right there? You crazy? What's he doing right now? What's he doing to me? saying? What's he saying? Why is he using a Lenin quote here?
While the Russian invasion will certainly have numerous, enormous consequences that'll be felt by nearly every single country around the world, it's obvious that none will experience more severe consequences than Ukraine itself. Their country is the one being invaded, bombed, besieged, and destroyed as I'm speaking. And their country is the one whose very existence Vladimir Putin has now openly called into question. While the extent of the damage is unclear for the moment, after all, the dust has eventually settled, it will no doubt be horrendous. Ukraine will experience reverberations of this trauma for generations to come. And from the perspective of the Kremlin, the invasion is most likely not exactly going according to their initial plans.
Yeah.
Putin and the Russian military clearly underestimated the ferocity of Ukrainian resistance, while they also placed too little of an emphasis on their own logistics and supply chains. The conflict is likely dragging on longer now than they initially anticipated, and that is a very dangerous situation. Because with Western sanctions pouring in, the Russian military is in a race against the clock before they basically go bankrupt. And in order to try and force a surrender faster, they may begin utilizing even more of their destructive and indiscriminate firepower, like concentrated artillery or air power, which they so far have largely been holding back. And when that happens, the destruction and
Vlad is not a shorten of Vladimir name. It's a completely different name. Vladislav. Okay. My bad. I'm a dumb American though, so I'm gonna keep doing that. I'm just letting you know. Like, I do have Angloid brain, so I'm gonna keep doing that. I'm gonna say Vladdy. Vlad.
refugee crisis, already the largest in Europe since the Second World War, will only continue getting worse. As it stands now, when I wrote this video, more than 2.5 million Ukrainians, mostly women and children, have been forced to flee the country as refugees, primarily towards the west in Poland, Hungary, Slovakia, Romania, and Moldova. If the war ends up dragging into a protracted conflict, the UN has estimated that there could be as many as 10 million Ukrainian refugees fleeing westwards to the rest of Europe, which will be enormously catastrophic.
Oh yeah.
To put these figures into some kind of perspective, during 2015, when Europe was undergoing the so-called migrant crisis from the Middle East and North Africa, the continent saw 1.3 million refugees coming in over the course of the entire year. There have now been nearly twice as many Ukrainian refugees as that in a matter of weeks. And
okay, there's one other wait, what? I mean, there's one reason. There's another reason there.
When Europe was undergoing the so-called migrant crisis from the Middle East and North
I mean, the reason was, I mean, he overlooked this part of the map here.
Africa.
Because it's not a part of the European Union. And there's two factors into play here. There's two factors that need to be taken into consideration here. They were not allowing these motherfuckers in, okay? Two, a couple million, were put here by Germany that basically told Turkey, like, you take this and we will literally arrest people that talk shit. Recep Tayyip Erdogan, if someone talks shit about you, we will arrest them, okay? We love you. Just keep those fucking Syrian refugees in your country. And we will offer any fact checkers to what I just said, like the amount of the amount of Syrian refugees that Turkey took and the deal between Turkey and Germany. 3, how close the borders are. Stop. You don't do that. Trains, planes, cars exist for every fucking refugee on this planet. Do not do that. Don't say that. That is a reactionary justification for not taking in refugees. That's bullshit. Fact checking, the amount, it was more than a couple million. It was more like 4 to 6. But again, that is just in Turkey alone. And Turkey was paid for that, and also still uses that as a threat, by the way. Which is like, don't make no mistake. It's not like Turkey is doing this out of the kindness of their hearts. Like, the ultimate goal there was a good one overall. Like, the ultimate consequence was a good one overall, But like, they still literally weaponize those immigrants regularly. They'll be like, "Oh yeah, we'll open up the floodgates to fucking, we'll tell them to go to Greece. We'll line them up on the fucking Greek border, see how you like it. Yeah, you should tell them about how right-wingers like Lawrence Southern were going to the Mediterranean Sea to stop refugees, border distance my ass. Yeah, literally, dude. Fact check on the existence of trains, planes, cars, sir. Yeah. That's why you have Canadian Nazis fucking traveling to Italy and like aligning with Italian Nazis to stop people from fucking, making this distance even. Not a big distance here, huh? No, don't think so. Does this seem like a big distance for you guys? What do you think? Like, look at what I'm pointing to on the map. Is that a big distance? No. Anyway.
The continent saw 1.3 million refugees.
Haven't they tried to put back some into the Kurdish towns in Syria that the Turkish military forced the Kurds out of? Yes. Their ultimate goal is to utilize the Syrian refugees to repopulate the northern Syrian corridor with towns that will ultimately be run by Turkish governance or Turkish aligned governance instead of Kurds. That is their goal, which of course I don't think is a good thing for the record. Do not misunderstand me. Make no mistake. But such is the way of the American hegemonic power. That's what happens.
They keep saying the first conflict in Europe after World War II. WB the Balkan
Kurdish dolmas is
conflict in
basically ethnic cleansing?
1992?
Yes, it is. It is. That is literally what it is. What do you mean? Yeah, that's what it is. Yeah, 100%. That's precisely what it is. You know who's allowing that to happen, though? America. Anyway, let's keep going.
Coming in over the course of the entire year. There have now been nearly twice as many Ukrainian refugees as that in a matter of weeks. And it could be nearly 10 times as many. And at the same time as the refugees have been leaving, equipment, supplies, weapons, and thousands of foreign volunteers have been pouring in from dozens of countries across the world in order to.
You're right about criticizing the double standard in EU towards Middle Eastern versus Ukrainian refugees now, but on the other hand, you don't criticize the circumstances that caused these refugee crises in the first place. Completely different. Material conditions, my ass. Russia exerting hegemony on Ukraine is about as justifiable as the U.S. exerting hegemony on the Middle East. Wait. Do you think I think it's okay that Russia Wait. Do you think I think it's okay that Russia invaded Ukraine? What the fuck? No, I think it's exactly the same. It's unjustifiable. Am I reading it wrong? I don't understand. Why are you saying things that I've said a million times over and then making it seem like I'm not saying that and I'm saying the opposite or something?
4 months of Ajay brain rot. Let's go.
Just it? Okay, got it.
To help Ukraine's fight for survival. It's also worth remembering that we're only a few weeks into this conflict so far, and wars are often fought and won over the course of months or even years. It is still far too early to tell how this is all going to go. But should Putin's Russia manage to emerge victorious, it has the potential to completely upend the entire order of Europe. With the flurry of sanctions, travel bans, airspace restrictions, mass arrests within Russia.
Certain Redditors have been spreading that you're pro-imperialism despite you literally saying the opposite. That's crazy, though, because, like, if you come in here and you hear me speak, you have to, at the very least, like, does he only cover international news? Does he ever cover domestic? I cover domestic news all the time. But also, once again, if you're coming in here and you're like, dude, I 100% believe this guy loves Putin, like, you gotta fucking realize, like, no, that is unjustifiable. Even if I was pro-Russia, which I'm not, holy fuck, dude. Like, Vladimir Putin's actions are completely idiotic from a strategic posturing as well. Even if you're fucking pro-Russia, you have to be anti-Putin at this point, okay? If you were pro, like, Russia's territorial integrity and sovereignty or whatever the fuck, which I don't give a shit, okay? I'm not. It's still fucking idiotic. Because you're a Crimea take? Yeah, I know. I know that's the reason why they say it. But, you know, notice how in 2014, this didn't happen? Because it was a little different. Crimea was a little different, I think, than what's going on now. All you're doing is minimizing what's going on currently if you keep trying to, you know, make it seem like it's Crimea is the exact same.
and more over the past few weeks, it truly appears that a new Iron Curtain is descending across the European continent. This time shifted over slightly to the east from where it was before, from Kaliningrad on the Baltic to the Ukrainian shores on the Black Sea. It is beginning to appear that the Cold War in Europe between the West and Moscow, once believed to have ended for good back in 1991 when people like Francis Fukuyama unilaterally declared the end of history, merely instead took a 30-year break and has now once again returned to haunt us all. The evidence of this is manifold and all around us. Historically neutral, recent polls in both Sweden and Finland have shown that the majority of the population in both countries is now in favor of joining the NATO alliance for the very first time.
For the record, I called this as well.
Both governments have expressed some form of interest, and Moscow has directly threatened them both with some kind of action should they dare to proceed. Of course, Finland's admittance into the alliance would be particularly controversial, owing to their large land border with Russia and their proximity with St. Petersburg, Russia's second largest.
Dude, it's pretty funny when people go, only 51%? What? Like, why isn't it higher? Like, these people cannot comprehend a world in which, like, people aren't sucked into, like, NATO good across the board. We want America to, at the very least, dominate our foreign policy and not have like kind of our very own neutrality agreements with a country like Russia. Finland has dealt with Russia on their own historically. Okay, they've. I was a deorbiter the other day. I was watching a deorbiter the other day, reacting to a clip of you saying you're anti-Russian imperialism, and everyone in the chat threw up Kabbas. They really live in a Hasan-hating bubble. Yeah, I mean, what are you gonna do?
Largest city and the hometown of Vladimir Putin. For decades during what I will now always refer to as the Cold War's first phase, the Soviet Union essentially bullied Finland into always staying neutral between East and West. And it seems as if old habits die hard. But among the greatest of changes ushered in by Putin's war in Ukraine is the revolution undergoing Germany, and specifically the German military and defense doctrine. During an incredible session of the German Bundestag just 3 days after the invasion, the new Chancellor Olaf Scholz announced a series of earth-shattering measures. The German armed forces would receive a one-time $113 billion.
Bro, this is so creepy, by the way. Germany, when I found out that Germany does this thing where they like, what is it? It's like celebrating the not, obviously not the Nazi Germany, but like, they have this like weird thing that they do. What is the ceremony called? It's so weird, dude. It's a really old tradition and they do it. And it is so fucking strange to see. Zapfenstreich. Große Zapfenstreich. Am I saying that right? They're not. It's not a Nazi ceremony. It's not a Nazi ceremony. Technically, it's not a Nazi ceremony. But when I do see it, I'm like, yo, that shit is creepy as fuck, dude. It's like, especially considering like the AfD, for example, will not say that they're Nazis, but will simply state that they are. Yeah, there it is, dude. Holy fuck. The Grand Tattoo beating retreat is a military ceremony performed in Germany and Austria. It's similar to the military tattoo ceremony performed in English-speaking countries and is the most important ceremonial act executed by the German Federal Armed Forces, the Bundeswehr, and the Austrian Federal Armed Forces, the Bundesheer. The Zapfenstreich is performed only during national celebrations and solemn public commemorations to honor distinguished persons present at such special events. Examples of the farewell ceremony for German federal president. Or at the conclusion of large military exercises, it takes place in the evening hours. It consists of a military formation. It's older. It predates. Oh, this is yep. This is it. This is what I've seen this. This was yeah. Angela Merkel's military send off.
Augen gerade aus.
A cute anarchist girl ghosted me after it came up that I watch you has Sag.
You fucking dodged a bullet, brother. Don't worry about it. I don't know if it's the fucking gray uniforms that look kind of black at night, or if it's the helmets, or I don't know what it is. It's just like, or you know, or repeating the traditions of like the German Empire. I don't know what it is, but just something fucking. It just triggers like a flight or flight response in my mind. Could be the torches. Fire part is like kind of weird too. But it's also Germany, and like they are the marching. But it's Germans, you know what I mean? It's like, so it looks like when they put Nazis in a movie without saying Nazis. Yeah, there is some vibes there that just, you know. Just hearing German coming from people dressed like that feels weird. Lamau, Hitler ruined it for Germany's army forever. Yeah.
German military send off. Yikes.
No, I get it. Like, I know that it's not Nazi shit. Don't misunderstand me. Like, I know it's like a tradition that predates Nazi Germany. It's just that like Nazis kind of ruined it. Censored Wolfenstein right there. Just missing the swastikas of the grainy beat black and white filter.
Let's cover up our genocidal.
Dude, as a German, I'm so fucking tired of the Nazi comparisons on Twitter. I mean, I know that these guys aren't like. I'm just saying the vibes are off. Can I say that? I'm not saying that. Obviously, they're not Nazis, but like the vibes are a little off. It's a little too close to comfort. The Finnish Air Force still uses the swastika? No, they do not, actually. 2018, I believe, is when they... 2018 is when they decided not to use it anymore. German here as well. They could have definitely done a better color palette without the tiki torches, in my opinion. Yeah, that's what I mean. It's just like... vibes are a little off, is all I'm saying. But yeah, Finland stopped using the swastika in their Air Force in 2018, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. So actually, chatter, they stopped using the swastika in 2018. So you're wrong.
Defense fund to rapidly modernize themselves, and from thereafter would receive a permanent.
It wasn't a swastika. It was literally the swastika. And not only was it the swastika, it was a swastika gifted to Finland by the OG guy who may or may not have gotten Germans to use the swastika as well. So, like, it literally was the swastika. Like, not only just any swastika, but, like, straight up. The main guy who was like, hey, you should use the swastika. I'm a Nazi, and you should use the swastika. It's pretty sick. The original guy who was like, who got Nazis to use the swastika as well. Anyway.
Permanent annual budget increase to more than 2% of Germany's annual GDP. This means that their yearly budget will be increased to around $78 billion, causing Germany's military to suddenly become the third best funded in the world.
Yes, the guy who gifted it was a Nazi later, but there was nothing Nazi in the Finnish use of it. What the fuck? I mean, listen, Finland went back and forth a little bit as well. Okay, there was times when there was a Nazi use of it. Let's not get into that, though. I love Finland. Okay, please stop. Okay, they did. They were a bit of a fake friend. Okay, that's all I'm gonna say.
21 months. Pog.
Unpoggers.
behind China and America. And critically, that means they'll be ahead of Russia's military budget. Very rapidly, the German army—
I love the local Swede saying, the guy who introduced the swastika in 1920s Germany founded the Finnish Air Force. I wonder what country that guy also was, was he Finnish? Your local Swede. I know a relative of him. He was Swedish, obviously. Exactly. Oh, dude. Yeah, anyway, let's continue. Listen. Europe, complex, complex continent, okay? A lot of infighting, a lot of inbreeding, a lot of fucking, going back and forth, a lot of fake friends, okay? Let's not get into it. Let's just continue with the video that we were watching. I hate having this conversation over and over again, but we have talked about this before. People get very mad when I bring it up.
Once again, for the first time in nearly a century, take over the reins of being the most formidable on the European continent. And the geopolitical revolution goes even further beyond that. Germany has also agreed to send lethal aid to Ukraine, and most unexpectedly of all, they've even agreed to indefinitely suspend the Nord Stream 2 pipeline project that would have brought in even more enormous quantities of natural gas directly from the vast sources of Siberia and Russia. The cost to build this controversial pipeline was more than $11 billion, and so of course, such a move will be difficult for the German economy to bear. But such is their resolve in showing solidarity with Ukraine. This is all quite
Finland never used it as a Nazi swastika, and the use of the Finnish swastika stopped after 22 for obvious reasons. I don't know where you get this 2018 from. It's just the Finnish Air Force, like I said. Yeah, Finland's Air Force quietly drops the swastika symbol. Oh, fuck. It wasn't 2018. Sorry. It was 2017, I guess. But like officially completely removed it maybe in 2020. It's pretty funny because like there's literally Finnish conscripts in the chat who are confirming what I'm saying, but there's Americans in the chat who are like, you're fucking wrong, dude. Like there's like, I saw 3 different people who have like been a conscript in Finland be like, yeah, it was really, they had that. Like that's the thing that was in the Air Force. Why? What is up with Americans, dude? What's going on? You guys all right? What the fuck? No, I have no health care. I mean, it's fine, yeah. It took them a while to phase out all the old aircraft that had the logo still, but they stopped using it on new planes since 2017. Yeah, I was wrong. I was off by 1 year. Sorry. Yeah. There's a really weird, fascinating phenomena in the chat that occurs all the time. And it's not exclusive to the chat, but it is something I see in the chat all the time, which is if I've never heard of it personally and Streamer Man is telling me about it, then it must be fake. Maybe I was right and you were wrong. It's fine. It's fine. It's okay.
Unexpected and unprecedented because right up until the actual invasion, Germany was hesitant to actually support Ukraine and come out hard against Russia.
I mean, I didn't know about it either, by the way. So
critically over-dependent on Russian natural gas, even without the Nord Stream 2 pipeline. With limited domestic energy resources of their own, Germany has had no other choice but to import nearly the entirety of her energy needs from abroad. And with some of the largest natural gas and oil reserves in the world, geographically nearby Russia has always been the most significant provider. Through a complex series of pipelines that have been constructed over decades sprawling out from the vast oil and gas fields in Siberia, Russia directly provides Germany with 1/3 of her oil and half of her natural gas. And the same is true for much of the rest of Europe as well. Italy and France also import significant amounts of Russian fossil fuels. And the closer eastwards the countries are to Moscow, the more fossil fuels they generally import. To the point where many nations like Bosnia, North Macedonia, Moldova, Finland, Estonia, Latvia, Serbia, Bulgaria, Slovakia, Croatia, Czechia, and Austria import nearly the entirety of their gas from Russia. This is largely because, geologically, the European continent was not blessed.
This is largely because they're fake friends, dude, to Russia. That's right, I said it.
With large amounts of oil or natural gas that power the modern engines of civilization. And instead, large amounts of these resources can be found all around the European Union's perimeter, in the North Sea between the UK and Norway, across the Ural Mountains in Russian Siberia, in the Eastern Mediterranean around Cyprus, Israel, and Egypt, and of course, around the Persian Gulf. With critical...
Someone asked a really crucial question. Wait, so they're cut off from exporting gas? No, motherfucker, what are you, crazy? Of course not. That's war. That's how war works. That's what happens when you literally think like war is like between good and bad, evil and good, and that like, you know, everybody's cutting off access to all resources. No, they're still pumping gas. That's how it works. That's why these things can be fucking avoided, and there's no conflict. There's just no reason for this level of death and destruction and conflict. That's what I've been saying from the fucking jump. There's always a diplomatic avenue. There's a diplomatic off-ramp before it gets to this point.
3 months we're gonna keep it going.
Like, I'm sure you'll be surprised to find out that currently, right now, as we're talking, American intelligence and Russian intelligence is currently communicating flight positions with one another. They are. Right now, anytime an American fucking plane is flying anywhere in the region, anywhere near Ukraine, they are literally in real time communicating their flight positions to the Russian Air Force. They did that in Syria as well. Do you want to know why? So that they don't do nuclear fucking mutually assured destruction. That's literally, no, that's not amazing progress. That's how war is conducted, okay? That's literally how it works. That's how proxy wars are conducted. But when you hear that, you're like, what the fuck? Wait a minute. This doesn't correspond to my fucking personal attitude about how, like, there's good guys and bad guys. So what's up? Is America fucking communicating with the bad guys then? They are. Just like all of those fucking Baltic states are literally relying nearly 100% on Russia. All those states that are in NATO are relying 100% on Russia to keep pumping gas. So what's up? Not how this works. And I don't know how to like marvelify this conversation. Other than just like, this is just how war is conducted. Say, you got one man spam alerted. Most Balkan states are entirely dependent on Russian oil. I can confirm. Sorry, I don't know why. Wrote it too many times and you got fucking clapped by fossil.
Critically few oil and gas resources themselves. The European Union is therefore critically addicted to the imports of Russian oil and gas flowing in from their...
Not Lithuania. You fucking owned me, dude. Shit, my bad. I guess I forgot about Lithuania.
Pipelines, and it severely limits their abilities to actually confront...
This is like when the Moldova Mama Liga comes in, chiming in with his takes.
in Russian Siberia, in the Eastern Mediterranean around Cyprus, Israel, and Egypt, and of course around the Persian Gulf. With critically few oil and gas resources themselves, the European Union is therefore critically addicted to the imports of Russian oil and gas flowing in from their pipelines, and it severely limits their abilities to actually confront Moscow's aggression. In order to overcome this dependency and energy insecurity, the European Commission has, since the invasion, outlined a 10-point proposal to make the EU completely independent from Russian fossil fuels by the end of the decade. But of course, that is going to take years to accomplish, and until it happens, every drop of oil and gas that Europe continues to buy from Russia will go directly towards funding the Russian war machine in Ukraine. The problem, though, is that there aren't really any easy alternatives for Europe to choose. Norway, the second largest provider of gas to the European Union, is already at maximum export capacity through their own pipelines and cannot provide any more than they already are. In theory, the EU could replace some of Russia's gas with liquefied natural gas or LNG imports, coming in on tanker ships from friendly countries like the United States, Qatar, or Australia.
Oh yeah, baby. Oh yeah, baby. That's right. Who stands to gain the most, dude? Who stands to gain the most, baby?
But there are many problems with this strategy as well. First, Europe lacks a lot of the infrastructure that's required for importing LNG. In order to do so, they need LNG processing terminals at ports that can take in the LNG from container ships, turn the liquid back into its gaseous state, and pump that into pipelines. Unfortunately, Europe has very few of these LNG terminals existing right now, with only a handful in Portugal, Spain, Italy, France, the UK, Belgium, the Netherlands, Poland, and Greece, while major global economies like Germany, who import more than half of their gas from Russia, have zero. So in order to begin importing LNG at a large scale, the Germans will have to build brand new LNG terminals. But that is going to cost billions of dollars and take years to accomplish. Secondly, even if the EU had the infrastructure, the supply chain of LNG is already highly constrained as it is, and met by massive demand for it in Asian economies like China, South Korea, and Japan. If the EU suddenly began buying LNG at a large scale, then the price for everyone would increase dramatically. The EU could also rely a bit heavier on their own limited domestic sources of gas, but this too is highly problematic. The largest natural gas field within Europe and
Hello from Ukraine. Ternopil remembers Svoboda when they obtained 34.69 and shit. That Nationalist Party has 3 men or so in parliament now. There are no significant right-wing or anti-Semitic sentiments, though Bandera's legacy is controversial. He became a symbol of resistance. Every nation has its heroes. None of them is saint, and some of them are much more glorified and covered in more blood than Bandera. I don't know. I mean, maybe like, you know, Robert E. Lee and shit. You know, you're right. But even then, I don't. I mean, he's right. If he was like, "Oh, America," like, you have a lot to say about Bandera coming from an Amerifat. You're right. I mean, our founding fathers. You're right. Winston Churchill. You know what I mean? But the difference is, like, I don't run defense for them, so that's the difference.
one of the top 10 largest in the entire world, is right here, the Groningen field in the Netherlands. For decades, this
I love my Polish ancestors that were butchered in Lviv. Fuck that guy. I mean, yeah, dude, you don't want to rile up the Polish, okay?
field provided
don't get
gas that powered much of the Netherlands and the rest of the continent, and in 2013, provided as much gas was extracted from it that flows through Nord Stream 1 towards Germany today. But the field's days are numbered. The extraction of gas from here caused wide-scale subsidence. That is, the sinking of ground beneath it. This phenomenon was further accompanied by significant earthquakes in the region of the northern Netherlands that damaged many houses and caused significant local unrest. Therefore, it was decided by the Dutch government nearly a decade ago to steadily phase the gas field out between 2014 and 2022, when production was supposed to halt entirely. But now, faced with the threat of Russia's invasion of
But you're like the officials do, which is worse? Dude, yeah, I know. I fucking shit on him regularly. What the fuck are you talking about? Do you know who's like, did something happen to people where like they just forgot what my position is on this stuff in America? Like how many fucking videos have I cut on precisely that? And you can too, for the record. Like you could just say that that's bad and wrong. You know what I mean? That's kind of what it is about being an international leftist, is like you have to literally recognize the nuances, but also, you know, a guy like Bandera is not someone you can fucking celebrate. And when your countrymen celebrate it, you're like, those are not your allies. You know what I mean? They're not, might seem like they are because there's a big threat of Russian invasion that has materialized at this point. But once that shit's gone, those dudes are not your fucking allies, dude. Think about how much we despise the fucking hogs and Nazis here.
Ukraine and the dire need to get the continent off of Russia's gas supply, the Netherlands has decided to continue extraction in the field until as late as 2028, with unknown seismic consequences around Groningen and the northern Netherlands for the future. and there are precious few other alternatives for the European Union to make. In theory, new gas pipelines could be constructed into the continent from other sources like the gas fields around Israel and Cyprus in a proposed project called EastMed, or from the gas fields of Nigeria that would loop around the African continent towards Spain. But just like building out the LNG infrastructure, these projects will cost billions of dollars and take years to develop, and in the end, they'll each only substitute a fraction of the gas that Russia is capable of pumping into the continent.
Plus 30K rubles in your PayPal account just for this take. Yo, what the fuck am I going to do with Monopoly money, you dumb bitch? Oh, he's back, finally. Dude, we were missing Moldovan Mama Liga in the chat. Finally, he's here. I've literally made fun of you so many times today. I missed you, man.
Continent.
Thank God you're
Meanwhile,
back.
and quite unlike Europe, the United States is tremendously geologically well endowed, with enormous quantities of domestic oil and gas resources across some of the world's largest fields in Texas, Alaska, North Dakota, and northern Pennsylvania. Thus, a full 65% of America's oil and gas supply is produced domestically within the country, and America has tremendously more energy security than Europe does as a result, and thus substantially more flexibility when it comes to dealing with Russia. Therefore, it was a much easier decision when President Joe Biden decided to ban the imports of Russian oil and
Yeah, no shit. By the way, yeah, that's kind of our proximity to Russia, our proximity to like any active conflict, our self-reliance, as a fucking continent. Yeah, that's why we can fucking have a different approach that is way more aggressive in the build up to the Russian invasion than, let's say, Germany and France, for example.
Yeah.
That's the most annoying part about this. And the reality is the United States can and will continue cucking the EU. And more importantly, Russia literally gifted this. Russia straight up gifted this. Vladimir Putin basically just fucking put his dick in a box and sent it gift wrapped to the American state. Like the worst thing. Even if you don't give a fuck about Ukrainian lives, it was the worst fucking thing strategically for him to do, okay? And obviously, first and foremost, I give a fuck about the Ukrainian lives before we talk about like Russia's strategy. So it's a failure on all fronts, like all fucking fronts.
11-month spiral.
So much so that it feels like a gift, an absolute fucking gift to America's most aggressive fucking Atlanticist lobbyists, the American defense industry, the American oil and gas giants. Like, can you imagine going from normalizing relations with Germany and like building a second fucking pipeline where you were going to increase Germany and Europe's reliance on Russian gas and building out a potential allegiance, an alliance to just straight up saying, fuck all of that. We are the enemy of the fucking entire world now. And America, the psychotic mad dog that is at the other side of this, okay, at the other side of this conflict, is now completely justified.
gas into America, since Russian fuels were only providing less than 2% of the total US supply in the first place. America can easily replace the difference by banning Russian imports, whereas Europe simply cannot. Of course, the Russians do realize that by this point, their lucrative days of selling fossil fuels to the West are rapidly coming to an end, and in anticipation, have been massively pivoting their supplies and business towards Asia, where many major economies like China, India, and Pakistan have still so far declined to join in on any serious sanctions against Russia. Right now, Europe remains Russia's largest customer of gas by far, since they import around 200.
This is a really good outlook as well that like allows everyone in America to take a step back and basically fucking take a breather and realize that like, one, Europe is still a major trade partner for Russia, so they're still giving money to Russia nonstop in exchange for gas, oil, commodities, okay? And also the other side of the planet, you know, where there are billions of fucking people, or what you would consider to be the global south, has not taken the same militant stance or, I don't know, I guess implemented sanctions to Russia at all. So this is something that you need to, personally, this is something that you need to comprehend when you look at it. It's easy to get lost in the fucking sauce and think like, oh, the world is unified against Russia. The world is unified against Russia. When there's a lot of unification, but even the people who are unified against Russia are still, at the same time, you know, giving money to Russia. EU strikes gas deal with the U.S. as it seeks to cut its reliance on Russia. I mean, yeah, I already mentioned this. They're fucking making out like bandits, dude.
Billion cubic meters from them per year. By comparison, right now,
I gotta pee.
China
I'll be
only
back.
purchases around 38
Old
billion
man
cubic
Shabby, thank you for
meters
the
a
5
year
get the
from
subs.
Russia, which is primarily provided by the Power of Siberia pipeline here in the Russian Far East. However, in light of recent events, this will likely change very quickly. China has yet to become connected to the massive gas fields of northern Siberia that the Russians use to dump gas into Europe from. And under an agreement that is closer than ever now to fruition, a second pipeline called Power of Siberia 2 may be finally constructed from these very same fields directly to China's hungry industrial core around Beijing. That'll double Russia's gas exports to China. Unlike the West, China will likely continue without passing any serious financial sanctions on the Russians. And quite to the contrary, will even provide the Russian government with investments into new pipeline infrastructure that flows towards Beijing, like Power of Siberia 2. Because they want and need Russia's vast energy resources. And now that business in Europe is drying up, China senses an opportunity to make a good deal, while Russia sees the opportunity to simply shift business elsewhere. As a result, while the war in Ukraine is ripping apart all of the bonds between Europe and Russia, it also seems to be pushing Russia and China closer together from a financial and energy perspective. Over time, Russia may end up pivoting the entirety of its energy resources towards the emerging markets and economies of Asia. And from China's perspective, whatever happens in Ukraine might provide invaluable insights into how a potential future Chinese invasion of Taiwan might go. At the same time as all of this has been happening, another fascinating way that the world is changing before our eyes over this war can be seen in the air. Since the beginning of the war's outbreak, Ukrainian airspace has obviously been completely sealed off from the rest of the world, and international flights have all been avoiding it. But then, just a few days following the invasion and as part of their overall sanctions package, the European Union blocked all Russian airlines from flying over their airspace, followed up by similar declarations from Norway, Iceland, the UK, Canada, and the United States. In retaliation to these blockages, Russia also decided to ban the airlines of 36 countries from using their airspace, including all EU, British, Canadian, American, and Japanese airlines. As a result, Western airlines have largely stopped flying to Russia, while Russian airlines have largely stopped flying to the West. So while a physical Iron Curtain has yet to actually descend back across Europe on the ground, the Iron Curtain of the air is already very much a new reality again. Live flight radar maps are right now showing the airspaces of Russia and Europe as being completely separated, with a massive empty no man's zone in between them where no—
Sorry, I had to feed Fiona. Before I forget.
Nobody is flying over at all, covering the entirety of Ukraine, Belarus, Moldova, and Western Russia, all the locations nearby to the war. Respecting the dangerous boundaries of war and the political airspace blockades, Russian airlines are sticking to their own flight corridors, while European airlines are sticking to theirs as well, across the new Iron Curtain of the sky. As the largest country in the world, Russia's geographic position on the map now represents a colossal barrier to the free flow of Western airlines around the world.
In 2020, Putin was nominated for a Nobel Peace Prize. That shit done fall off after they gave it to Obabe. Dude, anyone can be nominated, dude. What do you mean? It's about winning, okay? And let me tell you something. It doesn't matter because, you know, Obabe won it, so it did fall off. And Aung San Suu Kyi as well, who literally is fucking now responsible for the ongoing a genocide of Muslims, Rohingya Muslims. So A lot of people that have won Nobel Peace Prizes are just kind of pieces of shit, really. Henry Kissinger, not great.
World, and especially represents a huge geographic challenge to fly around for Western flights between Europe and East Asia. For example, just a few weeks ago prior to the war, Air France was operating a route between Paris Charles de Gaulle and Tokyo Narita that took them through a substantial amount of Russian airspace. And now, after the ban on using Russian airspace, they've had to start flying this new route to the south that adds 2 hours and 30 minutes more onto the total flight time. And there are dozens and dozens of examples just like this that have been forced to change over the past few weeks. Here's the old flight route on Lufthansa from Frankfurt to Beijing, and the new one. Here's the old route on Finnair from Helsinki to Bangkok, and the new one. And probably the worst of all, this route pre-war, the Japan Airlines operated between Tokyo and London. They used to travel west across Russian Siberia, and now instead is traveling east over Alaska, the Arctic Circle, and Greenland before finally arriving in London, which adds an extra 3 hours of total flight time to the journey. This geopolitical impact on the aviation industry over the past few weeks is not new, and it's pretty much an exact mirror of the old phase of the Cold War, back when the Soviet Union denied their entire vast airspace to Western airlines.
Aung San Suu Kyi was literally just couped a year ago. She turned a blind eye to Rohingya in order to appease the military, but they overthrew her anyway. Yeah, I mean, that's what I mean. She had no power, but leading up to that, she also kind of totally acted like it wasn't a real thing that was going on. I already ran the ad break chatter. I thought you were, damn, I thought you had like a, I thought you had like an actual take and not an ad break.
Just as Russia is doing now. During those times in the older Cold War, airplanes were far less fuel efficient than they are today. And so flights traveling between Japan and Western Europe over the Arctic Circle had to stop somewhere to refuel. And that primary refueling stop became Anchorage, Alaska. I already made an entire video covering the geostrategic importance of Anchorage's location. And
Go, baby.
That video has
Alaska on top, dude. Once again.
never been more relevant than it is now. When the Cold War abruptly took a pause in the early 1990s, and Russian airspace was finally opened up to—
Didn't you deny the Rohingya thing happening like a few weeks ago? Genuine question. Yawn. Come on, Fakatas. Just because you're a known fucking troll in the chat doesn't mean you can, like, you know, do the exact same kind of fucking annoying trolly shit that, like, the Just Curious Andes do, okay? Yeah, you're gonna get fucking clapped for a week now. Good job.
To the west, Anchorage's importance as a layover and refueling hub for flights between Europe and East Asia nearly evaporated. But suddenly now, after more than 3 decades, in the past few weeks with the resumption of Russia's airspace closure to the west, Anchorage might just be making a huge comeback. And the geostrategic location of Anchorage in Alaska is now even more important than ever, as many more
Two fucking, you know, two superpowers back on top. Anchorage, Alaska, and fucking Venezuela, dude. Let's go. That's what I'm talking about, dude. Hey, you know, silver lining, boys.
More international flights will likely begin making their long-awaited comeback, flying above America's last frontier. But, interestingly,
the Maduro-Anchorage axis.
Many airlines operating the same services have been made to fly extremely different routes because of all the different bans. Since many Asian airlines can still fly across Russia, they can now do what European, Western, and Japanese airlines cannot. While the Lufthansa flight from Frankfurt to Beijing now has to add hours of time flying to the south in order to avoid Russia, Air China doesn't have to, and they're still flying straight through Russia. In a similar vein, the Air France flight between Paris and Seoul must now fly the much longer and costlier route to the south, while Korean Air can still just fly straight through Russia. Thus, Western airlines are facing a serious economic disadvantage on all of these routes between Europe and East Asia when compared to their Asian counterparts, who are immune to the Russian airspace ban. And who knows how that's going to play out over time. at the same time, Russian airlines themselves are being affected as well by their own newly made geographic barriers. The primary Russian carrier Aeroflot has canceled all flights to Europe until further notice. And with the airspaces of basically all of Europe and North America now blocked off to them, Russian flights elsewhere have been seriously complicated. This Aeroflot flight from Moscow to Cancun, Mexico, for example, has had to change to a completely new route that carefully avoids European, Icelandic.
Dude, I love Wendover real life lore's like obsession with planes. I mean, this video took a very weird turn. Like, we went from like, you know, all the political players, you know, natural resources, to just like a 20-minute video on how, you know, these routes are so drastically different. Okay, it's crazy.
Greenlandic, Canadian.
He's like, I had to fit 8 minutes of plane routes in here in this video. It had to be done.
US airspace in order to reach its destination. But significantly more challenging from Moscow's geographic perspective is this: the Russian exclave of Kaliningrad, wedged in between Poland and Lithuania, completely surrounded by EU states and EU airspace. The airspace around Kaliningrad is now completely blocked off to Russian airlines.
Oh no.
Before the ban, Russian flights between the exclave and the Russian mainland would simply fly in nearly straight lines between their destinations. But now, they have to all concentrate around St. Petersburg and thread a very narrow needle of open airspace that's allowed to them through the Baltic Sea in order to reach Kaliningrad. And none of this is to even mention the unprecedented and enormous sanctions that Western countries are pouring onto Russia, which will have devastating financial impacts on every Russian citizen for years or even decades to come. Further, I haven't even mentioned the dozens upon dozens of Western companies that have announced their pullouts from the Russian market. Like, most symbolically of all, McDonald's, who was among one of the very first Western companies allowed to open a store in Moscow back in 1990, when it was still a part of the Soviet Union.
It's over, bro. He's like, once Mickey D's and Domino's Pizza pulls out, or Pizza Hut, sorry, pulls out, Russia is closer to restoring the glory of the USSR more than ever. These are the Western capitalist pig dog, hedonistic, hyper-consumption engines that rotted the brain of the Bolshevik. Those who fought long and hard against Western influence because they saw Pizza Hut and they were like, oh, this is good. Now they're back. After that, it's just, oh, you fucking love McDonald's? No, I mean, I do. I do love this shit, by the way. Oh, so now you aren't a hedonist? I'm being sarcastic. I fucking love this shit. Are you kidding me? Always.
In the 30 years since then, McDonald's and Russia have built and developed an incredibly close relationship, with around 850 locations across the country that provide around 10% of McDonald's entire worldwide revenue. But then, in a matter of days,
I've literally multiple times talked about how commodity consumption is an incredibly important method of control that neoliberal capitalist democracies have actually gotten right. That the USSR did not hyper-focus on and absolutely got wrong. Very easy way to just get people. It's a very easy way to sedate the masses, and it's a good way to sedate the masses. If that sedation has to occur with governance that comes along with governance, like, you literally have to do that. China does a decent job at it, straight up. They have a very unique approach. It's like half that and then half authoritarian methods of control.
Putin's invasion of Ukraine completely wiped out what it took the company more than 3 decades to build, as McDonald's announced that the company would be closing all of their locations throughout the country. And the same story is true of
China offers a broad diverse range of commodities to its consumers, its citizens, that the USSR was unable to offer. Which was a mistake. They were also effectively shut off, I mean, from the rest of the world too. Like, I mean, coffee has personally led to fucking riots. You know what I mean?
One more month and I've officially spent.
That should have been the
this
first
leftist invasion
inclination that like people want their fucking treats. You have to give them, you have to give them fucking bread and circuses. Like you have to. 10% of jobs in Russia were McJobs.
Dozens of other companies, from IKEA to Adidas to Netflix to Visa to Sony and so many others. The list is seriously enormous. And in response to all of these pullouts, the Russian government has threatened to nationalize the assets of all of them still remaining in Russia, essentially turning the page back to the command economy style of the Soviet Union. Of especially critical importance, however, are the maritime shipping companies Maersk and MSC, who've joined in pulling their shipping and logistics services from the ports of Russia. And this will only exacerbate perhaps one of the most major ways that this war is changing the world: the supply of food. You see, during normal times, Ukraine is the world's 5th largest exporter of wheat. And during 2020, they exported more than 18 million tons of it to countries across the world, but most importantly, to hungry countries across the Middle East and North Africa. 60% of Lebanon's wheat supply just prior to the war was being shipped in from Ukraine. And since their most major grain silos were all blown up back in 2020 during the Beirut port explosion, they only have 1 month worth of wheat reserves still remaining as of the writing of this video, and they're in an extremely dire situation. Meanwhile, Egypt, with a population of more than 100—
Bro, Lebanon, no matter what happens, Lebanon takes a L, dude. It's so sad. Like, Lebanon stays taking L's straight up. It just sucks. It's so unfortunate that no matter what the fuck happens, they're fucked every time.
100 million people to feed, and with scarce agricultural land of their own, is the world's largest importer of wheat. And an overwhelming—
Yeah, it's like Turkey. Yeah, literally. Lebanon and Turkey just taking L's steadily, no matter what happens.
85% of their wheat imports come from just 2 places: Ukraine and Russia, who are currently at war. Understandably, with the Russian army currently occupying large chunks of Ukraine, including most of the country's ports, and Ukrainian farmers fighting on the front lines, the harvesting and shipping season in the country will be a difficult one this year. But it won't be much easier for Russia either. With enormous international sanctions, shipping companies leaving ports, and an increasingly unpopular war that is consuming vast quantities of resources and money, Russia, who is usually by far the world's largest exporter of wheat, may struggle to ship out supplies to countries who need it as well. Together, Russia and Ukraine account for around 1/3 of the entire world's wheat and barley exports. And as a result of the war and the sanctions hampering that third of the global supply, wheat and barley prices across the world have been skyrocketing. And countries that rely heavily on wheat coming in from the breadbasket of Europe are going to struggle to make ends meet. War-ravaged Syria—
it's less the breadbasket of Europe and more the breadbasket of MENA.
has already announced that it'll have to cut spending and ration bread. And then there's Yemen, already torn apart by an ongoing and brutal civil war that has claimed the lives of hundreds of thousands and already facing a starvation situation. Yemen is the world's 12th largest importer of wheat, and nearly 40% of the country's wheat imports usually come from Russia and Ukraine. What are they going to do if 40% of their wheat supply gets wiped out this year, when they're already facing the prospects of a famine as it is? The
It's not a prospects of a famine, they have a famine.
Being blocked off from the global market will be profound and likely huge.
It's really cool that the United States basically added additional sanctions quietly to Yemen, like literally 2 weeks ago, to the functional government there. So that was fucking cool too. Like, just a reminder that, like, to all the motherfuckers who use like Ukrainian blood to wash their hands of America's crimes, they did that. That was like 2 weeks ago. So yeah.
hugely unexpected. The last time that global wheat prices surged this high was more than a decade ago back in 2010. And the steeply increased prices on such a vital commodity for much of the Middle East and North Africa led to public—
No sarcasm. You're an American, right? Yes, I am. Houthi militia is not the government. It literally is the functional government, dude. That is what it is. It's just the unfortunate reality. If you want to, it is just, that is what it is. It is.
Let's go.
It 100% is. I don't know what you're saying right now.
unrest that potentially partially contributed to the Arab Spring Revolution surged this high was more than a decade ago back in 2010. And the steeply increased prices on such a vital commodity for much of the Middle East and North Africa led to public unrest that potentially partially contributed to the Arab Spring revolutions at the end of that year that saw titanic political shifts across Tunisia, Libya, Egypt, Yemen, and Syria. There's really just no telling how vastly the crisis in Ukraine today could affect things like this going forward in the near future. But something that is clear now is that wars in the 21st century almost always have vast global consequences. Putin's invasion of Ukraine has changed Russia, Ukraine, and the world forever in more ways than I could ever convey in a 30-minute video on YouTube. But by analyzing how Putin and how Russia have behaved and fared before during times of war and crisis, we can likely figure out how this present conflict will ultimately go. The invasion of Ukraine is only the latest of several wars initiated by Putin's regime. And as the ferocity and intensity of Russian attacks on the country continue ramping up in scale, the scenes that we're all seeing in the news every day are beginning to reflect more and more the very first war that Putin led Russia through more than 2 decades ago in Chechnya. Today, Chechnya is a republic within Russia, and its leader, Ramzan Kadyrov, is a close ally of Putin's, who has deployed his own Chechen forces alongside of the Russians in Ukraine. But 3 decades ago, this was hardly the case. As the Soviet Union disintegrated, Chechen separatists declared their independence from Russia, and the Russian government fought a series of brutal wars to keep them under their control. The first war against Chechnya lasted for 2 years, and despite having overwhelming military superiority, the Russians largely failed to win because of poor morale amongst their troops and near universal opposition amongst the Russian public at home. 2 issues that are similarly crippling the Russian war effort in Ukraine today. After thousands of lives that were lost, the Russians signed a peace treaty and Chechnya was a de facto independent state. But then just a couple of years later, in
Wait, what? Defend this? Wait, why would I? What is wrong with you? What the fuck? People fucking love coming in here and then getting mad at a position I do not hold. Like,
Illy Jesus.
what the fuck? Yeah, dude. Well, I mean, there were acts of terror. So yeah, of course you got to level Grozny. This is just the only way to deal with it. Obviously, America style, you know.
1999, after the rise to power in the Kremlin of an at the time unknown Vladimir Putin, the war resumed once again under his new command. Chechnya was devastated, and the capital Grozny was besieged and so thoroughly destroyed that in 2003, the United Nations called—
It's just is crazy. It's like it literally feels like I'm dating chatters. You know what I mean? Like Chatter dreamt. And in the Chatter's dream, I cheated on them. So now they're in here yelling at me about a dream that they had. Fucking wild, dude. Like, why are you mad at me for, you know, something I did not say? Something that you fabricated.
Called it the most destroyed city on Earth. Putin began his political career as the leader of Russia by violently subjugating Chechnya back beneath the control of the Kremlin. And as a result, it is one of the most important conflicts to know about in understanding the current war in Ukraine. But unfortunately, if I made a video about all of that on YouTube, the violent nature of the war would mean that it would become demonetized and age restricted, and as a result—
If you guys want to know what my takes are, I have a YouTube channel. Like, just go there. Watch it. A lot of people have one-sided beefs with you. Yeah. Anti-tanky Redditors have been obsessed with you lately? Yeah, because I'm a fucking tanky, baby. Ooh, I love tanks. Say that like you actually post there. I mean, there are YouTube videos. Be sure to subscribe when you're there, obviously. But like, you can find my opinion on pretty much everything, anything and everything. I've been online as a political commentator, as a leftist political commentator, for far longer than literally every single one of these little fucking limp dick baby brained shitters on the liberal side now, who have decided that they're somehow more left than I am. You can find all of that. 10 years of content out there, okay? Some of my opinions have changed. Some of them have been, some of them have gotten a lot better over time, well-rounded. But, check it out. Check out my fucking YouTube, baby. Subscribe while you're there, too. Hit the bell. Been around for 10 years. A lot of those people that are now saying I'm a tanky, or a lot of those people are now saying like they're more leftist than I am or some shit, like they were literally Nazis not that long ago, you know? And that's fine, honestly. Like I've said this before, the entire purpose of what I do is to get people to change their minds. So that's cool, as long as you change your attitude, change your mind, learn. You live, you learn, and, become better. What is your take on garlic sauce on top of a shawarma sandwich? Goated.
There's simply just no way that you would ever see it here. So instead, I created yet another full-length companion video to this one in my ongoing Modern Conflict series that's about the same length as this video that covers the entire course of Russia's 2 wars against Chechnya throughout the 1990s from beginning to end, and uploaded it directly to Nebula, which, as you've probably heard by now, is home to tons of exclusive, ad-free content, like my entire Modern Conflict series, with 11 other additional full-length videos with more than 3 hours of additional content that you can go and watch.
Your views on international relations is mostly in line with international relation realism. Those giving you shit for them are in support of liberalism, liberalism, the very same international relations theory that brought all of the U.S. wars in the past 30-ish years. I'm not a realist. It's materialist, but I do understand, and yes, I do see other nations as like independent nations who have their own perspective. The problem with like the liberal approach to international relations is that you can do that to Libya. You can flex dicks on Libya. You can flex dicks on fucking Afghanistan. You can flex cocks on Iraq. You can roll over all these countries just like Russia rolled over Chechnya, right? The difference is you can't do that to Russia. And that is where we are arriving at this fucking conflict of a lot of people not recognizing that like Russia has a military, Russia has nuclear arsenal, Russia has, their own interests. Russia is also providing energy to all these other countries. The only reason why Americans have, I guess, never really fucking considered what we've done in like Libya and all these other fucking places, the only reason why they have not ever talked about this sort of shit is because they didn't have to. It doesn't matter. We're dominant. We're the dominant force, so it doesn't matter.